You're saving those before you delete them, right?
Yeah. I copied a new, or duplicated the project. So I have a project that has it saved.
Okay.
And then I opened the new duplicated project, renamed it, deleted to those. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. That works. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is, I don't even know how many weeks in a row we're into it by now, but we're excited. We're so excited for this show.
So excited for this episode.
We're excited to be here. We're excited to be with you. We're excited that you joined us today. We're just excited.
Yeah.
We're stoked.
We're excited to help you, to
Yeah.
learn from you as well.
Our goal here with the Balance for Life podcast is we want to help you unlock the secrets of happiness. We want to see you succeed. We want to succeed. We want to help you, help us, help you, help us. Mm-hmm. Or help us, help you. I don't even know. One of those ways. Anyway, we just want to help in any way that we possibly can. And we love you, and we're here.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. I'm excited about this episode because I've been thinking about this topic a lot lately. Mm-hmm. And this is technically a spiritual health episode, but I think what we're going to talk about can apply to all four of the pillars, as per usual.
Yeah.
But I heard an analogy recently in a podcast I was listening to called The Stick of Joseph, and I thought of another analogy that I thought fit really well. I'm going to give both. So, I'm going to give theirs.
I like it.
So these brothers that do this podcast, their goal in their podcast is they talk about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Book of Mormon. They try to give an objective, present both sides of the argument. So that's their goal. They're members of the church. They believe in the Book of Mormon, but they also don't want to be only giving one side of it. Mm-hmm. They try to be very open-minded, and I really appreciate that approach.
Okay.
And their analogy for why they do that was something to do with keeping both eyes open. They're in the Marines, and they talk about when you're shooting with a scope. I can't explain it as well as they do because I'm not in the Marines. Anyway, but when you're at a close distance, it's really important to have your other eye open so that you can, while you're looking through that, also see what's around you.
Oh, interesting.
And because, then you don't want someone blindsiding you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So their point with that was, as you come across new information that maybe challenges your worldviews, some people will close their eye to that, but others will only look at that and forget everything else they know because they feel like, I already know it. Why do I need to focus on that? But the problem is you're keeping that eye shut, and it's really easy to forget about what you've always thought you believed.
Yeah.
So it's really important to look at both sides objectively. That's what I want to talk about today. The other analogy, the one I came up with that maybe I stole from somewhere, I don't know, was look both ways before you cross the street. Why do we look both ways before we cross the street?
Because there's traffic coming from both directions.
From both directions. You want to see both sides. And so when we see this a lot in our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where there's so much anti-material out there. Mm-hmm. Some of it's true and valid, and a lot of it is not. Mm-hmm. But it's presented in a way that it's absolutely factual, and people hear it and they're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't know this. Have I been stupid believing this my whole life? And they approach it with one eye shut, where they're like, well, I already know what I believe, so I'm just going to focus on what this other side is saying. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to get blindsided and to just believe something that's not factual. And we're going to give some examples. But it's important to look at both at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
so you don't get hit by a car.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I think just that idea of keeping both eyes open, being open to new perspectives, I think is a really good way to maintain, I'm trying to think of how to word this adequately. Maintain decorum. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but just the way that you approach people and the way that you come across to mm-hmm. people, being willing, I think, is the biggest thing. Being willing to accept other perspectives. Mm-hmm. Being willing to accept that that there's more than one way to look at things, and having that open perspective on life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea.
For sure. I think it's important for your relationships, because if someone approaches you with the opposite viewpoint of you and you automatically shut it down, that can be a strain on a relationship. It's important to consider other people's points of view that oppose yours. You're not going to learn if you don't consider that you might be wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
So I have an example that I want to share. Mm-hmm. And this does have to do with religion. I saw a comment, somebody I don't know, on social media. I can't remember where, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. Basically bashing people who believe in the Bible, just Christianity in general.
Okay.
And their example was, how could the Bible be true with the story of Noah and the ark? It is physically impossible to have two of every animal on a boat that size, and for like the amount, the variety of species of animals that exist, just not possible for the story of Noah to be true.
Okay.
So I've thought of a couple of different explanations for how that story can fit into what we know today. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like, these are just like ideas I've come up with,
They're
right?
Periisms.
So, yeah, exactly. So one thought I had was, what if the flood actually did happen, but it didn't cover the whole earth? I mean, it covered the portion of the earth that they knew about, whoever recorded that story. Mm-hmm. So maybe there was a big flood, and God did command Noah to build an ark, and he had two of every animal that lived in that small area on the ark. Now the ark's big enough to fit and obviously it didn't need to have maybe certain birds or whatever. Like if they could have flown just a little distance away and not been affected by the flood, wouldn't need to have fish. All right, you don't need two of every species on the whole earth potentially in this scenario. So that's one idea I thought of. Another idea, it's an allegory. Maybe it wasn't literal. I'm not saying that I believe that. I'm just saying that's a possibility, right? Like the Bible can be true, and the story of Noah can be an allegory meant to teach us something, right? So and then I had a third possibility, and I can't remember what it was, but those were two that I thought of.
But I think the idea that
I remember the third. But
you know how often in the Bible do we see metaphors used to teach, and how often do we see parables used to teach? And I think it's very plausible that could be the case. I think another thing, as you were mentioning, another thing to consider is, we believe in creation, but that doesn't mean that species haven't evolved over time. And there could have been a lot fewer species thousands of years ago than there are now, because as they crossbred and multiplied, we've gotten new hybrids and new kinds of animals living on the earth as we see it today.
And then the third thought that I had was, how do we know that Noah was the only one commanded to build an ark? Let's see, the flood did cover the whole earth, okay? How do we know that there weren't hundreds of people that God told, build an ark, I'm going to send animals to you, they're going to come on the ark, and we just have one recorded story of it? Like, the lack of evidence for something does not mean it's false. Right. And that's the trap that a lot of people fall into when trying to disprove religion or a set of beliefs, is they say, well, there's no evidence that backs it up, so obviously it's false. It's impossible for that story to be true, as I understand it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're understanding it wholly. Right. So part of it is, one, I think attacking a religion is stupid.
Absolutely.
Our good friend in our band, our drummer, said, don't be anti anything, be pro something, right? And I really think that's a wonderful way to live.
Yeah.
Is that, think about, what am I for, and focus on that.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be against anything in that. I think that's a really good way to look.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it's important too to remember that we're all flawed.
Oh, yeah.
And so, there are going to be times when we might be judgmental, or we might be doing something that we're not supposed to. and that's human.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to do that, and that doesn't mean that somebody else isn't doing the exact same thing, or it doesn't mean that we don't recognize that we are flawed. It just means that we're human.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So,
speaking specifically spiritually, I think there's a lot of ways that this can be applied in your life. I think no matter what you believe or don't believe, you can learn something from what other people believe.
Mm-hmm.
Another analogy I really like is how a group of people trapped or caught monkeys in the jungle, and they would have these traps. I think it was boxes with a hole that was small enough or big enough for a monkey to fit its hand in, but small enough to not be able to get their fist out.
Oh yeah,
with the fruit in it.
It's like a raccoon trap.
Yeah. So the monkey or the raccoon grabs the fruit, and they won't let go of that fruit, so they can't get out. And even as they're like being picked up, like they just don't want to let go of that fruit. And I think what happens sometimes when we're anti something is we're grabbing onto this fruit that like our perception of what somebody else believes doesn't make sense at all. And I'm not willing to suspend my belief for a moment to consider why do they believe it.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot in people that are against various religions, but particularly my own because it's the one that I've
Because it's
lived.
prevalent.
Because it's prevalent for me. But I see, well, you guys can't be Christians because you believe in this doctrine that I can't prove is true or false, but I don't believe it, and so you're not a Christian, right? And it's like you're so focused on what you believe is different than me that I can't learn from what you believe. And I've tried really hard in my life, especially the last few years, to be open to what other religions teach, to see what can I learn from that.
Yeah.
I believe that there's truth in all religion. Whether you don't believe in religion at all, there's still truth in religion.
Absolutely.
Okay? Any system of beliefs has truth to it, I think. At least that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Maybe
they have to be based on some sort of truth. And I like going back to you talking about the evidence, right? And just because there's a lack of evidence doesn't mean that something is untrue. I always go back to I love the Santa Claus.
Yeah.
The movie The Santa Claus with Tim Allen. And when the stepdad Neil is trying to convince Charlie that Santa Claus isn't real, and he says, well, have you ever seen Santa Claus? And Charlie says, have you ever seen $1 million? And Neil says, well, no. And he says, well, just because you haven't seen something doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so I think that's absolutely the way to look at it, is just because you can't comprehend another person's belief or you can't grasp and understand their perspective doesn't mean that there's no truth in it.
Exactly. Another phrase I really liked from a podcast I've been listening to, I can't remember the name of the podcast, the guy's name is Bridger, he said when he was compiling like the evidence for and against his system of beliefs, the church that we belong to, he came to the conclusion that there was just as much evidence that supports it than there was that contradicts it or whatever, right?
Okay.
There's, like, you can find evidence for whatever you're looking for. Really.
Pretty much.
His conclusion was, I get to choose what I'm going to believe. And I think it's important to do that, especially with religion or with spiritual beliefs. You get to choose what you believe. That's the reality that we face as human beings.
Yeah.
And so, be open to other beliefs, but choose what you believe in and make it positive. Make it a positive in your life. So
Absolutely.
I think as far as spiritual health goes, we're going to be much more spiritually healthy. Much more spiritually healthy. That was hard to say.
Yeah.
If we are open to the opposing point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. One of the things that I've done the last 3-4 years, 5 years, I don't even know, a couple of years. But one of the things that I've done is I've tried to reach outside of my way of thinking a little bit, and I've read other spiritual books. I've read the Tao, and I've read Ramtha, and I've read the Viking Bible, and I've read the Samurai, Book of the Samurai. So I've really tried to focus on, what positive can I find in this? What value can I gain from this? And how can I use that to strengthen what I already believe?
Yeah.
So it really is a good way to say, these two belief systems, maybe they differ in this area, but they're similar with this.
Yeah.
and find the ways that you can help strengthen your own belief.
Yeah.
And well, because like you said, we all get to choose what we believe, and I think every one of us, even though we might belong to the same church, we probably
have some different beliefs than each other.
Different beliefs, and we probably have different ways that we've gotten to our belief, which means that our perspective is going to be different.
Exactly. Here's the thing. I have met and spoken with people from lots of different religions, and I've had positive conversations with people from every religion I can think of.
Yeah.
I've sat down with the Jehovah's Witness and had a really just interesting, thoughtful conversation about what we agreed on and what we disagreed on, and I learned from some of the things that I disagreed on, and I thought, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. And I've done that with every religion. I have friends who are atheist, agnostic, Catholic, just you name it, Jew, Islam. And there are good people in every religion. There are dumb ones in all of them too, including my own, right?
Yep.
Like there are closed-minded people everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? But
absolutely.
Just because other people are like that doesn't mean you should be, right? That's my philosophy is like, I am going to be open-minded no matter what everyone else is doing.
Well, and I think that's the important thing is to remember that there are dumb people in every demographic.
Yeah.
And there are bad apples in every batch. and to judge an entire community based on the actions or the beliefs of a few is wrong, no matter what that is, right? We don't do that with other lifestyles or choices or anything like that. So to view somebody as being a certain way or thinking a certain way just because of what you think they believe is wrong, and we should be willing to listen to their perspective, and we can learn from everybody.
For sure. So I want to apply this, look both ways, keep both eyes open, to some other pillars as well, just for a minute, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think this can apply to anything in life, not just spiritual. And we've talked a lot about religion in our church, and we want this to be something that everybody can learn from,
Accessible.
no matter exactly accessible. So I've thought of examples, and feel free to chime in with your own too. But physical health, I think a lot of times people fall into the trap of they just want to lose weight so badly that they will do any diet, and they won't think about like the potential negative consequences of that diet.
Yeah.
Okay. And they'll end up running into negative consequences of changing their lifestyle to a certain way.
Yeah.
Now, not to say that like all diets are bad. Generally, I don't like the idea of diets.
We promote
But-
balance.
Exactly. So I like the idea of eating healthy, and maybe you do need to cut back on how much you're eating if you're eating too much. But a lot of times it's like only eat meat and leafy vegetables. It's like, okay, what nutrients are you missing out on
Yeah.
from fruits and from grains that maybe you shouldn't eat too much of, but you still need that in your diet. So I think when it comes to physical health, if you just, you're only looking at this one thing that I'm doing and you're not considering everything else, you can fall into this trap of running too much, of, not getting some nutrients by dieting too much and causing problems to your body.
Yeah. Well, and I think at the same time with that, it's a big reason why a lot of people fail, because they don't, we always hear that people make their resolutions January 1st and most people are done with them by like January 3rd.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is because they don't consider enough factors. I think there's a lot of different reasons why resolutions fail quickly, and that's a completely different topic for a completely different episode. But I think that could be a key factor in it, is because we don't think about all the consequences. We just think about, I've got to get into shape as quickly as possible. So I'm going to start out by, full-on bodybuilder lifting exercises every single day, 7 days a week. And I'm going to eat only chicken and lettuce for the next 6 months. And we set these unrealistic goals because we don't consider all of the angles.
Exactly. Yeah. Thinking about it from a financial perspective, there are. Let's take Dave Ramsey. I think everything Dave Ramsey says works for somebody. Okay, and probably 90% of it works for me, and I think that's really smart advice. There are certain things he says where I'm like, that just doesn't seem realistic for me.
Yeah.
Or that just honestly isn't something I want to do. Okay. But I still try to stop and consider like, well, how could I be wrong? Right.
Yeah.
And maybe how could this not be right for me, but it might be right for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a conversation with someone close to me who had come across like a small inheritance, but it was enough towards like, ooh, do we put it towards our house? Do we put it towards investing? And I was trying to convince them that in the long run, with their interest rate on their home, on their mortgage, and with like average interest rates by investing in certain things, that investing was the better option.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they ended up going with putting it towards their house anyway, even though to me it was like clear, this is the better option in the long run. This is getting you more money in the long run. But I realized maybe it would get them more money in the long run, but maybe what they were doing was better for their emotional health, better for their marriage. Maybe like paying down that mortgage to a certain degree was just going to give them so much more like freedom of their feelings and less anxiety, that it didn't matter what was going to give them more money in the long run. And it could, like, depending on how the market goes, that could have been wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's not a 100% guaranteed thing. So I realized that, hey, I would have done the other choice with that, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't the best choice for them.
Yeah.
Or at least a good choice, right?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes that's the best way to look at it is, I actually had somebody a long time ago that was not active in our church, and it was at a time when I was really struggling, but I remember they said to me basically doing something that improves your life, no matter what it is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether you pay down your mortgage or invest, you're improving your life.
Yeah.
Right? There's
Exactly.
no only right way to do it. And I think that's the way to look at everything, right? There's no one right way to exercise, right? Somebody that wants to be a bodybuilder is going to exercise differently than somebody that wants to be a marathon runner. When it comes to religion, we believe that our religion holds the most truth. That doesn't mean that there is not truths in other religion. And if you're doing something that improves your life and improves your outlook, it's never a bad thing.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah. I didn't think of, I hope this is probably going to bleed into the audio. We have a husky and we have a stupid dog also. And sometimes she just starts barking at stuff and that gets him howling, and then they feed off of each other, and it's just like a minute of just yap, 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 howl, howl, howl.
Fun.
Okay. So sounds like they stopped.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of like an example or an application in mental emotional area. I'm sure there is one. I don't know if you have one off the top of your head, but we don't necessarily have to have one. But
yeah, well, I think still going on financial health. Like we said, there's no one right way, and I think that's one of the things too. Is Ramsey might work for somebody, and I know quite a few people that his methods have helped drastically, and they absolutely love it. I know other people that disagree with his methods and would rather have a different approach, right?
Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah. So you've got this one perspective of save, pay down debt, right? Put every dime that you have towards paying off debt.
The more debt, the better. That's going to help you build
the other
wealth.
one is use your debt to invest and gain assets. And that's going to help you build wealth, right? So we have these two differing perspectives, and both of them are right to an extent. And so it's finding, all right, what areas of this idea are going to help me and what areas of this idea are going to help me, and put it together to what fits you best.
For sure. And then I think when it does come to the mental, emotional health aspect of it, there's often this stigma around seeing a therapist, taking medication, that maybe for some people isn't the right answer, but I think when you're not open to that being something that can help you, that can be a detriment to your mental health.
Yeah.
And I know someone whose parents they had lost a baby, a miscarriage, and their parents convinced them not to see a therapist because they thought that therapists were all high or whatever.
Oh,
I don't know what the
interesting.
I'm not sure what the logic was behind it, but I felt really sad that 20 years later they're kind of still dealing with this. That you're always going to be dealing with it even if you see a therapist, but missed out on that opportunity to have a professional help talk them through, like, how can I heal, how can I move through the stages of grief.
Yeah, and I think that's where being open-minded, just understanding that everybody's going through something and there's something different, right? I think that's where empathy comes in, of being understanding of somebody else's pain. Even though I may have never lost a child, I understand, because I have children, I can kind of understand what it would feel like to lose one. And so understanding that you have a different way of coping, right? And everybody has a different way of coping. Everybody has a different way of working through and processing their feelings.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the mental health is the biggest, is just being understanding that everybody's dealing with their own stresses. Everybody's dealing with their own issues, and being open to them being able to work through it in their own way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great. I think that was a good kind of last thought before jumping into the challenge. So our weekly challenge is, the next time you hear something that goes against what you believe, what your worldview is, which I'm guessing will happen within the next week. Okay, because it happens pretty frequently to all of us. The next time that happens, stop and ask yourself, like, am I opposed to this just because it goes against what I've always thought? Is there something that I can learn from this? See what you can learn from it. That's the challenge.
Yeah.
See what you can learn, and if you don't come across something, actively find something maybe that opposes your worldview and see what you can learn from it. But consider your worldview and that at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just focus on one. You have to focus on both at the same time, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I think like you said, focusing on how can I apply this new thing to my current belief system and strengthen and build on what I currently believe.
Exactly. So that's the challenge.
I love it. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up for us. So feel free to leave us likes, comments, share our stuff. 5-star reviews are always helpful.
And join us for our next episode. We have weekly episodes on Mondays.
Yeah, we're going to be wherever you're listening or watching right now: YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, Google, everywhere that you can get podcasts.
And I don't think we've planned what our next episode is going to be.
Well, I think,
but it'll be on physical health at least.
I think next week we'll be talking about physical health. So it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to be a good one. I'm excited for it.
Those are always fun. Yeah. It's going to be about steroids, probably, I think.
Yeah. Creatine.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you next week.
See ya.